Steve, thanks a lot, man, for squeezing in this interview here. I saw your video go viral on X, and I'm like, yo, I know that guy.
Yep.
Having done this story, I don't know if you can even see it. It's actually
Okay.
this one right here. That's you. You can't tell, but that's you right here in the
All right.
picture, of course.
Awesome.
When you're giving that presentation to that group, that large packed house outside of St. Cloud. I don't remember the name of the town. It was an unincorporated community, right? It wasn't even a town. And I remember thinking, yeah, there's no way they're going to get a huge crowd here because one, it's a very small area, and two, it was about the wolf issue and the alarm that Minnesotans have about the number of wolves and the amount of harm they're doing to hunting and farming and even people's pets. And I just thought the other thing why I thought this wasn't going to be a big event was I didn't think there were very many wolves that far south in the state. Um, well, the event was standing room only, as you
Yep.
remember.
Yep. We did
Uh,
we did we did about 20 meetings that winter, town halls across the state. Biggest ones were
yeah.
between 700 and 800 people. The group was called Hunters for Hunters, still is called
Hmm.
that. My son started it. And just to raise awareness for hunters, pet owners, livestock producers, wolves are a major problem, and they're being protected by the far left Democrat Party at the expense of ranchers. Some ranchers are losing uh, 15, 20, 30 calves a year when beef prices are through the roof. And everybody says, well, the cattlemen get paid when they lose a calf. They get paid. There's money set aside for that. The DNR does everything they can to stop that payment. They'll go out and say, maybe your cow was shot by a kid driving down the road and then a wolf happened to eat it. And since we don't know if a wolf actually killed it, we're not going to pay you. And the 10 that you can't find that are simply missing, yeah, you're not getting paid for them either. And then at the end of the year, the DNR and the state, they put forth a report and they say, really, there wasn't that many wolf kills. Surprise, we don't have a problem. But if you're up here
Well, that
living with
was
the problem, we have a problem.
yeah. Well, that's what had me meet you, and I don't want to go too. That's such a provocative topic, and um, the language around that just really I think gets people into their side, right? It really polarizes people. Like they
Yep.
either, there's such a love-hate relationship with wolves, basically, is what I'm saying. And
Yep.
and there's a lot of people in the middle too that recognize wolves are great, but let's not have them, causing all this
Well,
issue and da 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 da.
well,
But
and we're a little off topic what we're going to talk about today, but I'll just wrap
yeah,
this topic up with, you know what? People can have a love affair with wolves, but that love
mhm,
affair shouldn't spill over onto
sure.
my land and come and kill my dog. We've had many people have their dogs killed in their front yard. Their family pet is
Hmm.
disemboweled in their front yard. So why should a woman call me and saying my care dog that I have for my disabled child went out to go to the bathroom this morning and there's 12 feet of intestines drug out of my dog in my front yard. And so someone's love affair with wolves, great, love wolves all you want, but that shouldn't spill over to violate my rights and my safety on my land.
Yeah, 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 it couldn't have gotten more provocative than of imagery than you just described there. But
Yep.
I remember that did happen to that Bernese mountain dog.
Yep.
Um, that poor animal. And you did that interview with that couple who lost their pet that
Yep.
way.
Yep.
Um, but Yeah, that's why that wolf issue is so difficult because people love them and then they see that look these are dangerous animals and they are capable of that as well, and they're kind of like lions in Africa where people love these majestic animals, but man they are deadly, and they're deadly to humans, so
I've
it's even
I've
more.
kind of joked, the state has a lot of land, and I kind of say this tongue in cheek, but the people that have love affair with wolves, let's go fence in about 5,000 acres. We can run a tour bus through there. Once a day at noon, we can collect tickets, and you can go through that 5,000 acres, see all the wolves you want, and we'll make it kind of like Jurassic Park, and we'll turn sheep and pigs and dogs loose at noon for the tourism, and they can go watch them kill these animals, but it doesn't have to happen in our backyards.
You know, when I was, so I wrote that story about the wolf issue in Minnesota. So, okay, we'll talk about this a couple more minutes. And when you really step back and look at it, right, you've got this beloved creature that also has a vicious side. And I thought, where else have we seen this? And it is what they do in Africa with the lions, right? But there it's even more extreme because lions, I think, might be even more revered in general, and they're more deadly. They kill people. So what's the solution there? How do you coexist with these animals? And they've built these safari parks. And so I wondered a similar thing, like, will there be a time where there is such places, these game reserves or something in Minnesota or elsewhere that allow wolves to roam free without, on public land that's managed just for that purpose, so that they can keep the wolves separate from, you know, human civilization.
Right. So you bring up a good point. How does a wolf have a right to roam and be free and do whatever a wolf does? And you said they do have a vicious side, and I would contend that they are vicious. They don't just have a vicious side; they are vicious, and they eat for a living. They either sleep, breed, or eat. And when they're eating, they're hunting and killing. And so, opponents to what we want is just reasonable management. Reasonable management, so they're not killing our sheep and our pigs and our dogs and our horses. Horses are getting killed by wolves. They get one bite on a horse, their saliva is so filthy, the horse gets infected and dies. Guy called me up and said, my horse got attacked. I said, it'll be dead in 3 days. He called me back, it was dead in two. So their beautiful family horse was killed from dirty wolf saliva. But the opposite side will often argue, and they will say, wolves have rights. Wolves have rights. Well, here's what I want to argue then. So do mice, wood ticks, and mosquitoes. But somehow, when your dog comes up to the house with a wood tick, you pick the wood tick off. When a mouse shows up in your house, what do? You go buy a sticky trap. You get rid of the mouse. Well, the wolf was there before you were. Well, I'm not so sure about that, but how about the mouse? Maybe he was there before you built your home or your apartment complex. Maybe mice have rights and they should have a right to live in your house. People don't like that idea.
The
So why
equivalent of a
is,
mouse and a wolf to them is preposterous.
but I'm just saying, I mean, if we're going to take
You
this
know,
extreme, let's look at it really well and say mice have rights and they have a right to live there. They were there before you were. All we want is to have our industry, livestock production, living in the country, maybe having a pet, a yard dog, and not having everything get killed by wolves. So I could show you hundreds of pictures. We don't have time for that. Wolves need to be managed. The Livestock Pet and Safety Act, I think, will pass at the federal level. I think it will. I'm hoping it will. And we'll see what happens. So then they'd get turned back over to state management, and then the state of Minnesota would have to have a meaningful wolf season. And I don't know if the state of Minnesota, with its current leadership, could have a meaningful wolf season.
well, it's not totally unrelated either to the main conversation topic. I mean, one, it's how I
Sure.
met you when you were doing these Hunters for Hunters town halls across the state. But two, um, you're a deer farmer,
Yep.
and there's an interesting connection between wolves and deer farms, not just because maybe your deer might be threatened by wolves, I don't know, but because I personally sought out an elk farm for a couple of years because I hunt in northern Minnesota, deer hunt, and there's very few deer up there. Where we hunt, we're
Why are
allowed,
there, why are there very few deer up there?
yeah, yeah, well, it depends who you
Wonder why.
ask. Yeah, it depends who you ask. That's the problem that's why I did the story too. It's hard to get a
Yep.
straight answer. Like there is the consensus, the official consensus, but as we've seen in the last 5, 10 years, when it comes to the medical establishment or I don't know, maybe climate science or something too, but we've just seen these areas where, experts aren't always right. And um and so when they say, "Oh, it was just the bad winters that took care of the deer," that we had, say, 3, 4 years ago, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago now, we had a couple of severe winters, and that took care of most of the deer. That's why there's so few deer around. Um, I don't
But
doubt that, but
well,
you know,
well,
wolves eat a lot of deer, and there's a lot of wolves, and it's sort of like trying, asking us to deny what we see and hear. Like we hear the howling, we see the tracks, we see the carcasses, but that's not reducing the deer population. It's just sort of a asking
I,
us not to
I,
believe what
I
we
found
can
I
see
found
for
five
ourselves.
I've found 5 dead deer on my land this year from wolves. 2 young bucks, a 6 pointer, a fork horn, and there was probably 4 more that I did find. Now, there's many times I go out and I see ravens flying around in the woods, and I don't go investigate and see what they're chewing on. When I spoke over northeast of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, the room was full of men, about 600 of them in a gymnasium. A guy by the name of Scott Collins called me up. He was a janitor of the school, and he says, "Can we have a wolf meeting?" I said, "Sure." Who would organize it? I would. I'm the janitor. He hung up a few flyers. 600 people showed up in Carhartts and work coats. There wasn't a suit in the room except for the politicians that showed up to get some exposure as well at this meeting. And so it's my event, and I have the microphone for an hour, and then we would let the 600 people in attendance ask the politicians questions, which were mainly, "We have a problem. You got us here. How are you going to get us out of this position situation?" And the politicians grab the mic and try to explain what's going on. Wolves weren't always protected to this number. One guy stood up at the room and he said, "Hey," he said, "I've had this same family farm with my dad since he was a kid, and I was a kid. He got it from his dad." He said, "Every deer season, I could go out and plan on seeing on all of our acreage and in our area with our hunters, we could plan on seeing about 20, 30 deer combined. We'd come back and report. I saw 5, he saw 4. He said, "For the last 5 years, I went out with my granddaughter. I'm 62 years old, I think he said he was. We haven't seen a deer in 5 years. All we see is wolf tracks. All we hear is howling. We have not seen a deer in 5 years. Wolves have killed everything. If you control the wolf population today, and you could instantly control it, I won't live long enough to see deer back on my land." So, what do we tell the people who have hunting land that they bought and pay taxes for? And we say, "Please pay your taxes on your hunting land and build a cabin, hang antlers on the wall, and then pay your taxes on time." "Oh, you don't have any deer? Well, that's too bad. We love wolves, and you have to live with wolves because we love them. And you won't have any deer left. You got a horse? You're going to have a horse ranch, and the wolves are killing your horses? Just don't be late on your taxes. Pay your taxes. And if your horse dies, that's too bad. We love wolves." That's ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous that we've stepped on rural Minnesota with a hatred and said, "You have to live with these animals," and just put up with it. So
I
wolves are the problem. It's not hard winters. I had 30 below up here in northern Minnesota. People say we need better habitat. I don't see deer dying from lack of brush or trees or food to eat. I don't see that. I don't see them dying because it's 30 below. What I do see is a deer pulled inside out. The hide gets ripped off with force, the backbones get snipped off right along the vertebrae, and there's wolf tracks around the carcass that big. So we can say, it might not be wolves. That ain't going to fly up here in northern Minnesota. It's not going to fly. It's a problem.
Well, because of the difficulty we'd had where we hunt, north central Minnesota, with just not having that many deer around. I'd see like one or two, and if it wasn't, and you might just jump one. I think one year I saw half a deer. I saw it just leap into the woods, and that was all I saw all year long. And I went out hunting several times that season. Um, and so because I didn't get anything, I would go to an elk farm. There was a large elk farm about an hour west of me where I
Yep.
live now. I live on the edge of the Twin Cities metro, the west edge of it, the very west edge, and about an hour west, out into the rural part of the state, there was a elk farm. Anyway, great guy, and I'd put it in an order for a quarter of an elk, and that would last me as all year, like a full size deer would, because elk are so large, and uh, it was great. And then one year I called him, maybe 2 years ago, and then he's like, "Yeah, I gotta get out of the elk business."
And did
I'm
you ask
like,
him?
no, no.
Did you ask him why he's got to get out of the elk
Oh
business?
yeah, I mean, and it's why you were on that viral video
Well, let's
on
start
on
talk. Let's
X.
talk. Let's talk about that.
Let's do that. Well, I'll finish my story. So what he told me was that, look, the state is just making it really hard to raise. Now the official term, the Latin name for these animals, is it cervidae?
Cervidae.
Is that
Yep. Cer-
cervidae? That
Yep.
is that the word?
Yep.
Yeah, you would know. Cervidae, and these are all the deer, moose, elk, uh, whatever,
Yep.
caribou, all of these hoofed deer related animals. And the state was making it harder and harder for these farms to operate. They were asking them to put up more fencing. They were, uh, I don't know what else they were doing, but they were making it more and more difficult. And he read the writing on the wall. And his farm was very successful. He had grown it from maybe a dozen or 20 animals to 50, 60. I mean, he had a nice herd of elk, and the demand was, the demand was there. That's why it had grown as it had over the years. He
So
was
what?
he had a great service, and then he's like, I got to just sell all these animals and get out because I see the writing on the wall, and they're going to make it impossible to operate this elk farm in a pretty short amount of time. So we're selling all our animals and getting out of the business. And I was bummed because he was a great resource for me and for so many others. And I just remember thinking like, here's a service that's um, well loved, right? It's he's got a lot of people knocking on his door, calling his phone. People really appreciate the meat. Elk is super healthy, grass fed, whatever. I mean, it's not wild, but um, it's still really healthy eating. So from like a nutritional and health standpoint, from a rural development standpoint, and then just from the ability for people to buy and grow and live their life freely. I mean, it was just to me it was a beautiful thing that he had a beautiful business there, and to see it shut down and then multiply that times however many elk and deer farms are in the state, I saw it as a real bummer and like a real knock on that freedom and economic activity.
Well,
Um,
let's boil down what you said just a little bit, and I'll make a couple
okay,
corrections. Okay.
okay,
Everything
okay.
you said, I appreciate, but let me ask you a couple questions. Why would you want to go buy elk meat? Just a quick
It's
answer.
healthy. It's delicious and it's healthy.
Okay. What do you pay for hamburger in the store right now?
I think
Beef.
at Costco it's like 4.50 a pound, maybe $5
It's
a pound.
expensive. It's expensive, isn't it?
It was
We
about the same price. Well, that's part of it too. If you buy it in bulk, you can get elk processed and packaged for about the same price as beef. And you can get beef anytime. Like elk is special. So to
right.
be able to get elk at that price is, I think it came out to like $8 a pound, $9 a pound,
Okay.
packaged and everything, and maybe even a little cheaper than that. And that to me is a bargain because elk is, it's kind of a delicacy.
So my point is with the Asian bird flu, avian bird flu, we've killed millions of turkeys and chickens. We've had attacks on pork producers in California. We've had things happen with our beef industry. Right now in America, we've got less beef on the ground than we had in 1950. In 1950, we had one cow. Some quick Googling told me these answers. We had one cow per 4 people. Today, we have one cow on American soil for 10 people. Cows are through the roof in prices. People are selling off their breeder cows so they can make good money. This is going to snowball what we call the protein crisis coming up down the road. That's a whole nother topic. It was interesting that you wanted to go buy some elk meat because it's healthy and everything else. My point is it's often cheaper. You commented earlier and you said the state of Minnesota is making it hard on these guys. Let me clarify that. Tim Walz is a Democrat. Tim Walz had the Democrat trifecta. He can majority control in the House and the Senate, and he had the Attorney General. Then let's throw in there that the DNR leadership is far left. That's a fact. So we've got Bob Meyer, the commissioner of the DNR. We've got Bob lobbying and pushing, and his game wardens pushing for laws that won't just make it hard on us, that will end our business. So we end up in a lawsuit, and Philip Pultzer, an attorney for the state of Minnesota, was asked by the judge, Judge John Tunheim in District 8 Federal Court. The judge asked Philip Pultzer, who works for far left Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, he's an attorney general. The judge asked him, it appears that the state of Minnesota, that's kind of what you said, the state's making it hard, that the Democrats in Minnesota who had all the voting power, which the Republicans tried to stop, the Democrats, it's not the state of Minnesota. Yes, they represent the state when they have this wicked majority. The judge asked, he said, it appears the state of Minnesota is trying to abolish and get rid of the deer industry when they've passed laws that Steve can't sell his farm. Your elk farmer
Okay,
can't sell his farm. That,
let's
that, go ahead.
I'm gonna ask you to
The-
to to, to take a little time out there because people listening and don't know you now. They've probably gathered a lot from the context that we've discussed, but why don't you just do a quick 30-second? I mentioned you're a deer farmer, but first off, that confuses a lot of people. And I remember, below your viral video on TikTok where someone took your interview on another podcast and just put it up on TikTok, I'm sorry, X. Um, People were commenting like, "Oh, we should not be farming wild animals." I mean, that's not appropriate. So there was some criticism of you and your livelihood, really.
So,
But
so let me let me
what
respond to that real quick. Then let's respond to that. So the Minnesota Constitution, are you aware? Can you tell me, do we have a right to farm under the Minnesota Constitution?
Yeah, I don't give their criticism too much
No,
air,
but
except
but
just to
do,
say that it.
do we have a
Well, I
right
just
to
mentioned.
farm?
Yes, of course, of course.
Okay, and what does it say? Do you remember? It says
No, no,
under
no. I have no idea what it says.
Article 13, Section 7
I don't
says
think
that.
a right to farm would have to be spelled out at all.
Well, no, we wouldn't think it would have to be spelled out, but this is what we have to do in today's day and age. Article 13, Section 7 says a person may peddle the products that they raise on the ground that they occupy, no license required. So my deer that you say are wild animals, I had an agreement with the state of Minnesota back in 1992. What does that make my farm? 34 years old. I've got a 1.75 miles of 8-foot fence. I had an agreement with the state. The state said, if you invest in deer as livestock, Minnesota statute 17.452 says that my deer are agriculture, my deer are livestock, they are not wild animals, and that I own them. So now that my deer are livestock, what comes tumbling in? The Minnesota Constitution says I may peddle the products that I raise from the ground that I occupy, no license required. So here I am in a legit agriculture business. When I file my taxes, guess what? I get to deduct a gallon of diesel fuel. I get to deduct a new tire for my tractor. And when I pay taxes, I pay taxes. And I pay the wages of the politicians who have simply voted to end my industry, not the state, the Democrats in power. And so here I am farming for 34 years. Judge John Tunheim in District 8 Federal Court says, it appears the state of Minnesota is trying to abolish the deer industry. And the attorney, Philip Pultzer, who works for Keith Ellison and Tim Walz, said, I wouldn't kick back on that. That's probably true. We're phasing them out. What a neat, handy term. We're phasing out an industry. That means you guys can go bankrupt and kill all of your animals and drag them into a pit because we've got Democrats in power. This spring, my good friend Stan Tweet calls me up. He was a dairy farmer for many years. He drove truck, he farmed. He got into livestock, deer livestock. And then these laws come forward. Which laws did they pass that Philip Pultzer, the attorney, says, oh, we're just phasing them out. We're giving them a chance to repurpose their land. Really, that's pretty nice of you guys just to pass laws, weaponize legislation to end our industry. We had close to 600 farms in Minnesota. We're down to 70. We're down to 70 farms. So let's just kill these guys off.
Deer farms.
Deer farms and elk farms. You're elk farming, buddy? He's in that group. Okay. So here we are. They're all bailing out left and right. My friend Stan Tweet, he calls me up. Steve, when Walsh signed the law, all of my breed stock are worth nothing. He made it illegal for me to sell deer in Minnesota. So my does that were worth $5,000 a piece are worth $60 to be slaughtered. He gutted my checkbook. Tim Walsh gutted my checkbook by passing these laws. It is illegal for me to sell deer in Minnesota. Bob Meyer at the DNR smiling from ear to ear. Robert Gorecki, another game warden, testifying and lying against us, smiling from ear to ear. The right thing to do if they wanted to end our industry would have been to say, you know what, we've got billions of dollars to waste on pet projects. Why don't we buy you guys out? We've decided we hate deer farmers. We don't want deer farmers around. You guys need to go away, but we'll buy out an old dairy farmer and we'll give him a little bit of money. Stan calls me up and says, I don't know what to do. I have no market. I'm sitting on an island by myself. I got a feed bill. My animals now aren't worth much of anything. What am I going to do, Steve? I have to make a hard decision. I have only so much money. Should I go kill all of my doe fawns from this spring with spots that I've been loving on and nursing on and taking care of and just, should I go kill them and drag them and throw them into a pit? Or should I put feed into them and spend money and then lose money on every one of them because Walsh made it illegal for me to sell them in Minnesota. Walsh made it illegal for me to sell my farm. When I retire, he robbed me of my retirement. Walsh passed a law that says you can keep farming, you just can't make any money. You can keep farming. We're going to take away most of your income. And once we take away your income, we're going to give you added expenses. So Stan, if you want to stay in the business, you can put up a $200,000 fence. You just can't sell any breed stock and you can't sell your farm. So when John Tunheim asks him and says, hey, looks like the state of Minnesota is phasing out the deer industry, that's kind of neat and clean because Stan said, what do I do, Steve? I'm going to have to go shoot all my doe fawns with a rifle and drag them into a pit. My heart broke. He's in tears on the phone. I hang up the phone. What do? I've got about 50 doe fawns too. I'm established. I can go a little longer than Stan. I went and took my rifle, went out and shot 12 doe fawns, shot them through the chest, and fired up my excavator and went and buried them. Why did I rush out right after he called me? Because my good friends in tears were all heading in the same direction. I sent him pictures of these dead doe fawns. I said, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat. I didn't want him to have to face this horror alone. These Democrat lawmakers are evil to the core. They're evil. The stress they've put on us. Stan goes out and kills 26 healthy doe fawns. Now people will say, why didn't you butcher them? You're kind of missing the whole point of the thing here. A doe fawn would give you at that point in time about 5 pounds of meat, and it would take about 3 hours, 4 hours to process. And if we fed that doe fawn up until it was mature, we'd have another $500-600 into it. So we're going to spend $600 to raise it up to get 35 to 40 pounds of meat. It's a losing proposition. We can't have a meeting with Tim Walsh. We can't have a meeting with any of these Democrats. Just go away, die. We've passed these laws. So we went and we filed a lawsuit in federal court. And we went all the way to the doorsteps of the U.S. Supreme Court. They declined to give us a hearing. They're too busy. They're not for us. They're not against us. They get too many cases. So what was the ruling that stands? The ruling that stands is there is no fundamental right to farm in America according to the Constitution. You earlier said, well, it stands to reason. We don't need a farming bill. People have a right to farm. When I asked about the Minnesota Constitution, you're correct. Our founding fathers never said, maybe we should put it in the Constitution that a person has a right to grow a garden. They didn't feel that was necessary. But when we elect whack jobs like Tim Walsh, this is what we end up with. They can just eliminate. The court ruling stands. Tim Walsh has the right to end a farming industry. In fact, I can show you the audio clip. I can send it to you on YouTube. Tim Walz, the attorney for Tim Walz in court, was asked at another hearing, could the state of Minnesota, the judge asked Philip Pultzer, could the state of Minnesota ban the beef industry to protect Minnesota from global warming? Now, I think the answer should be no, right? I mean, that would make sense, right? You can't ban the beef industry. Philip Pultzer and the judge, federal judge, asked Philip Pultzer, Walz's attorney and Keith Ellison's attorney, wouldn't that raise a constitutional crisis? You're eliminating the deer industry, which are livestock, which are paying taxes, making money. By state statute, they're livestock. Now you're eliminating it. You've admitted you're eliminating it. Could they also eliminate the beef industry? Philip Pultzer says, well, it would raise the issue to rational basis review. We'd have to, ultimately it'll be up to this court to decide, but yeah, we'd probably do it. We'd probably try. Are you kidding me? The people running our state are crazy. Things need to change.
Well, this deer farm issue is at the edge of livestock, the livestock industry or debate at where government uh, has the ability to uh, regulate and encroach perhaps into these operations. And what I'm going to ask of you right now, Steve, is something that you might not like doing, but I'm going to ask you to put on the other hat for a second
Let's
because
please
the,
do. Devil's advocate.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we have not mentioned this whole time yet why they're shutting down deer and elk
Mm-hmm.
farms.
This will be fun.
And so, well, we need to mention that,
No,
right?
be
Because
hard,
right now,
be hard on me because you're only getting a small part of the narrative. So I want you to be as hard on me as you can, and you're going to look foolish. So please go ahead.
uh, well, why
Ask
are
it.
they shutting you? Well, put on the other hat. Why are they shutting you down?
So let's
Just
talk about that. So what the Democrats have said is they said
because people who listen to this interview might not be familiar with this at all. That one, they didn't know. Like I said in the comments, they said, "Wow, you can farm wild animals. That's weird. I don't like that." So we had people who didn't even know you could farm deer, and then they hadn't heard of anything about this disease that experts say come from deer farms. So
yeah.
boom, that's a huge bombshell to people listening to
Wow,
this interview right
it's
now.
huge. Let's
Well,
talk
they
about
had no idea there was a disease.
let's talk
It had
about
not been mentioned yet. So I want you to put on the hat of
yeah.
of those who think that deer farms should go away, including many hunters, by the way,
Yeah.
right? I have
Yeah.
hunters close to me, and they don't like deer farms because they think that deer farms, well, they believe what the experts say. Deer farms create CWD.
Who's experts? Can you name one that you're citing here? Can you name an expert that
I
you're
don't know
citing?
any of the names. All the
Well,
names you've mentioned
you
so
just
far are
said
new to me.
experts. Wait a minute now. You built up your side of the argument. You said you're talking to experts. Could you tell me a name of who you're talking to?
Hey, you know me. If I have a side in this thing, it's I want elk from the elk farm,
Okay,
and I
so
can't get that
let me answer
anymore.
your
So you know
questions. Let
I'm
me
bummed
answer all
about
your
this.
questions. Let me
Okay,
answer them.
talk about the other side, please.
Okay, let's talk about the other side. In the wild, the DNR will tell you we're just trying to protect the wild deer from CWD, and it's all coming from deer farms. Deer farms are bad. CWD,
What's
they're going to kill
CWD?
all the wild deer. Chronic
What's
wasting
CWD?
disease. Chronic wasting disease, right?
Okay,
So
yeah,
they're
keep
they're,
going,
they're
please.
saying that we're just trying to control it. But did they tell you that I'm in a USDA? We're all mandated to be in a USDA program that we have to kill. When we kill an animal or it dies, we have to send in the brainstem for testing, and we have to send in the lymph nodes and the ear tags off our inventory, and that we have to send in hair samples, and that all of these samples get tested for CWD. And for 34 years, I've never had a positive case of CWD. And if I did have CWD, they'd come out and kill all my deer, and I'd get paid about $3,200 a piece under a USDA indemnification. So I don't have CWD. Kind of neat that they're saying we're just trying to stop the spread of a disease that you don't have. Well, Steve, other farms have had CWD. Let's talk about those. We don't want to talk about your clean, healthy farm. Let's talk about the farms that have had CWD. Okay, let's talk about those other farms. Every farm where they've had CWD show up, they do what's called a federal epidemiology report. Experts come in and they walk around and they study and they interview and they talk and they dig through all the records of sales and transactions. Bob Meyer with the DNR, who says we're just trying to protect the wild deer, he has access to these epidemiology reports, but he doesn't want to talk about them. None of them, because they exonerate the deer farmer. Every case has been exonerated. CWD
What does
does
that
not
mean? What do you mean
exonerated.
exonerated? Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
You know
There
what
was no
the
CWD in these farms?
Well, let me finish them. Okay, exonerated means yes, there was CWD, but where did it come from? In a case over by Rochester, the deer farmer had CWD. He'd been testing his deer for years. They were clean, 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 clean. Boom, he comes up with a positive, but he had not imported any deer. He didn't have a record of a deer. You have to record every sale of every deer and every purchase. And they got to know where they came from. Through disease control and mitigation, we track the movements of the animals so we can go back to a farm and say, aha, he bought a deer from you. Or in cattle, maybe TB, we could track a disease. So in this case, the one I'm talking about, and I can talk about many more, the farmer never bought a deer. So it showed up on his farm, but he didn't import a deer livestock. So where did it come from? They do an epidemiology report and they go over there and they find out that he's a taxidermist. They said, where do you get your customers? Where do they bring you deer from? You're a deer farmer and a taxidermist. Taxidermy is licensed by who? The Minnesota DNR, licensed taxidermist. They have rules in place. So he says, oh, I get heads from Wisconsin. Oh, Dane, Richland, Iowa, and Sauk County, Wisconsin have a 50+% positive rate of CWD. Did you get any deer heads from that area? Why, yes. When people bring you a deer head from a positive area of CWD and they drive for 100 miles and bring it across the state line and they bring it to your taxidermy shop, what's the next process? I cape out the deer head that was from the endemic area. I cut all the meat off the hide and I tan the hide. What do you do with the meat scraps? Well, I take the meat scraps and I feed them to my cats. Oh, did you know that prions from CWD survive the intestinal tract of a carnivore? Do your cats ever go in and out of your deer pens? Yes, they do. They go out there and poop all over the place. When vegetation grows up out of the cat poop, the prions are in the vegetation which the deer eat. So the word exonerated means that you're sitting here telling me, oh, I have experts. I don't know their names, but a lot of people on that side say deer farms are causing CWD. But in this case, who caused CWD? It was a taxidermy practice caused and licensed and watched and regulated by the Minnesota DNR. You can bring in deer heads from Wisconsin and throw the meat on the landscape. There's more deer moving around the country from taxidermy practices than any deer farm where I test 100% of my deer and I've never had CWD. So what you're saying is they're trying to shut down the deer farms to prevent the spread of a disease. No, they're not. I don't have a disease. But if we took your logic and your experts' logic and we said, hey, we're just trying to control a disease. Well, when TB breaks out in cattle, then we should stop cattle production all the way across the state of Minnesota. But the USDA is pretty wise and they say, hey, let's quarantine the herd that has TB and let's do trace backs from the farms where they've bought cows and go run all their cows and test all their cows. But we're not going to shut down the entire industry. I can go on and on and on. There was another case where a guy bought some land, fenced it in. And he had deer out there for years. And finally, boom, the deer farm gets CWD. And again, he was exonerated. He did not buy a deer. This was down by Brainerd. I can get you the name of the guy, and I could probably get you the epidemiology report to review. The experts from the feds come in and say, how did the disease get on this deer farm? Well, he didn't buy from a known farm that had CWD. It didn't happen. So what happened next? They go out there and do inspections of his property, and they walk around, and it's next to a gravel road, and he reports, I'm finding deer bones all over my property. I fenced it in, there's deer bones. And when I go work up a food plot, I'm finding deer bones everywhere. Oh, it turns out that the people in the community would drive down the gravel road and dump elk and sheep and deer and mule deer. They'd go out hunting out west, a DNR practice that you can bring back these animals. Out west is full of CWD. So they're dumping their rib cages from home processing and all the bones from these animals onto this land. Unbeknownst to him, he buys the land, fences in. What does the epidemiology report say? This CWD did not come from movement or deer or purchases of farm livestock. This CWD on this farm came from it being naturally occurring on the landscape from past dumping practices. So let's outlaw an industry that's heavily regulated. Plus, in the wild, most of the wild deer at the 96 codon are a GG, which is highly susceptible to CWD. Dr. Seabury out of Texas A&M is doing research to come up with a gene that is resistant and immune to CWD. He's working with Greg Fleece out of Wisconsin. So they've identified that the GG codon at codon 96 is highly susceptible to CWD. The SS marker at codon 96 is awesome. So the state of Oklahoma, State Representative Scott Fettgetter worked on a law out there to pass that deer farmers could turn their deer loose onto the wild to build up genetic resistance to CWD if they have an SS marker at codon 96. So here I'm breeding for SS markers at codon 96 through artificial insemination. The majority of my herd is SS markers. In Oklahoma, they can turn the deer loose to get that gene on the landscape. And in Minnesota, under Tim Walz, I got to kill all my animals and throw them in a pit that are USDA certified. Let's kill these animals and throw them in a pit and run Steve out of business. And everybody's like, well, the experts are saying it comes from deer farms and we got to control it. And the only way to control it is to kill them all. Let's kill all the wild deer. Did you know that hunters all across Minnesota are fit to be tied at the killing of wild deer? It pops up in the wild. What do? Let's kill all the wild deer. So the DNR comes in with federal dollars and says, boom, let's kill as many deer as we can. Landowners are fed up. What are real states with following the science and the experts that they can quote? What are they doing? They're breeding for resistance and turning these deer loose.
That's interesting. I tend to lean into the science when it comes to finding a solution to things like this because the mass slaughter, which I have known about and which troubled me and which attracted me to this issue because I saw it as being so extreme. Like if they found a plot of land or a county or a deer hunting zone where CWD was found, they would go in and kill all the deer. And I thought, holy cow, like that is scorched earth policy. Like, is that really what we need to do? But here's a question. How severe is CWD? It sounds awful, the title chronic wasting disease, but is it like is the cure worse than the disease to
Yes.
slaughter all the deer in a zone? Like what's your assessment of CWD? I don't know a ton about it. I just know that
Okay.
it's bad, but
Well,
how bad? Is it that bad?
who told you it was bad?
Well,
Who,
from what I've read.
well, yeah, because okay, just listen, they attach dollars. There's USDA dollars, millions and millions and millions of hundreds of millions of dollars appropriated to fight CWD. And as soon as they made this pot of gold available to states all across the nation, the states said, we want some of that money. We need the money. So how do we do it? We got to start testing for CWD. Let's test and we can
What
get
pot of gold?
the money, federal dollars allocated for for CWD testing, research, and fighting. The feds made money available for
Okay.
states to fight CWD. State said, we want the money. How do we get the money? Let's do testing. So they start testing. If you test enough, what are you going to find? You're going to find a disease. And people say, oh, it's deadly, it's terrible. All of your followers, listen, go online and Google Wind Cave National Park. Okay, and I'm going by memory here, but Google it. The facts are the same. Okay, Wind Cave National Park is fenced in South Dakota. They have about 200 to 300 elk. They came up with CWD in about 2001. And they said it's bad, it's deadly. All the experts say this is terrible. We're not going to have any elk left. And they're fenced in. And we have CWD. So at some point, you know what Wind Cave did? They were overpopulating. They weren't dying. They opened up the fence and chased elk out onto the landscape that from a known CWD herd. They're like, it ain't that bad. Kick them loose. It's all over out here. Years go by, they got grief for that. The population's growing and exceeding its capacity again. The whole herd, they're eating out of the same feeders, they drink out of the same waterers, they're grazing in the same area, they're pooping on the landscape. The
So
poop's
it's ubiquitous. It's just everywhere, and they're not
everywhere.
trying to contain it.
It's everywhere. So what does Wind Cave National, what does the liberal far left media do now to put fear in hunters? The headline, and I can show you the headline. In order to control CWD, they have to hire sharpshooters and have people go out there and kill these numbers down in order to control the disease. Does that not alarm you at all? The herd's overgrowing its boundaries, but we got to hire sharpshooters to go kill off the elk because we got to control the disease. It's been there since 2001. The herd should have died off by now. What's going on? This is
Yeah, it
ridiculous.
isn't adding up. Yeah. Well, look, when you kind of poke fun at where I hear, all the ways that I've gotten information about this, both I would say for and against it has come just from the general, the media in quotes that people might judge. But look, it was that collection of sources that led me to want to talk to you about this because
Right.
from the media, I've seen both the video of a deer or an elk with CWD acting erratically. It's a neurological disease. It is serious. But then I've also seen from the media the pit of dead deer that was photographed after they went through and slaughtered all the animals. And so I get to judge it and try to weigh those. All right, so this is like, what's the lesser of two evils here? Having this deer or elk have CWD, which is ugly and bad, but so is having a hole in the earth full of dead deer.
Yeah.
So, um, I just looked at that and it didn't seem to add up, and so I wondered, like, how serious is CWD? How like big of a threat is it to the deer population, and how much is it coming from farms? To answer that last question, um, do you? It sounds like you think every case of CWD found on farms the farmer has been cleared of responsibility. Is that true, or do you accept that CWD does originate on some deer farms in Minnesota, or is proliferated through deer farms in Minnesota?
Okay. So I told you several examples of I haven't researched every case, but let me ask you a couple
Yeah.
questions. Do you believe that CWD can fall out of the sky and land on the landscape?
No, it's got to come from somewhere.
So if it has to come from somewhere, you're correct. Once it's on the landscape, can it ever be taken off the landscape? No.
I'm highly skeptical that you're going to eradicate it. And look, that's why I thought the mass slaughter of deer in a zone with CWD was extreme. Um, and another parallel I couldn't stop seeing, because this happened in the last 5, 6 years, was it really reminded me of how overboard our state went when it came to COVID.
Hmm.
And we need to isolate, we need to shut all the schools down, we need to mask everyone up. And in hindsight, I think 95% of the population now accepts that that was the 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 prevention was the attempt to fight it was worse than the actual disease itself,
Right.
and in fact far worse. And so I wondered if maybe Minnesotan leadership was making the same mistake with CWD.
So Minnesota leadership is in fact making a mistake with the way they handle CWD. That's a fact. Okay. But let me go back now. If I want to drill this home to your audience and even to you, if we're going to sit here and say this is just trying to control the disease, I mean, everybody wants to control the disease. We can't have a disease, so all you farmers need to go bankrupt. And you need to sell your homes and move into a hut house in town. Your 34-year-old farm, you kill your animals, drag them in a pit, even though you're highly regulated through USDA and you test all your animals for CWD and you've never had a positive, you need to kill them. We're not buying you out. We're not paying you out. You're clean and healthy. Let's just kill you out. And people say, well, I
Tell
don't
us
think.
more about what that is, because right now I don't want. I want an accurate picture here. So what is the state making you do? What is
Well, I've
what?
said it and I'll say it again, okay? What is the
Hmm.
state making me do? They passed a law that I can't sell deer in Minnesota. Does that were worth 5 grand a piece that I could support my family, pay taxes, and be a contributing and pay my propane, my taxes, my house payment, and I could make a living in my 34-year-old farm. They said your animals for breed stock are now worth nothing. You can't sell them in Minnesota. Nobody can have a license to raise deer. You can't sell your farm when you retire, Steve. Your farm entity, nobody can buy it. You don't get a retirement. So they took away my present income. They took away my future income for my retirement. They say, you can keep farming. We don't want you to quit, wink, wink. But if you want to stay in, you got to put up a $200,000 extra fence around your property because we're just trying to control the disease, Steve. So if you put up an extra fence, then we know the disease is contained because diseases don't go through fences.
So
What?
let's be precise here. So they're saying you need to have more fencing,
Yep,
and they're saying you can continue to farm, but you can't sell your animals in Minnesota. So you could sell your animals out of state.
correct.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
Well, it's extreme. It's a lot.
Okay. So, how come I can sell doe urine all across Minnesota from the same does and the same bucks on my property, and I can sell thousands of bottles of doe urine for people to pour out in their woods, in their scrapes, for bucks to come and lick and sniff and inhale. And we're just
I don't
trying to
know.
keep.
Does DWD not transfer through urine?
Oh, it does. Wow, I can
Oh, then
sell
they
it
should
all.
get that.
I could sell it all over the US, and I do. The
Well, they should cut. Then they should stop that too.
should they?
Well, apparently, like if they're worried about CWD and it's passed through urine, then that's another thing they should stop you from doing. I'm being silly here, but like
Right.
if that's really an out or a
Right.
leak, no pun intended,
Right.
that would allow CWD to spread,
From
then yeah,
my clean
they should
certified
prohibit that.
from my clean
Yeah.
certified USDA herd with SS markers that are resistant to CWD, and I've never had a positive, and I've tested 500 brain stems. I've never had a positive. I don't have CWD, and so maybe
Hmm.
they should restrict me from selling urine from a known clean herd, is what
Right.
you're saying.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, they're stopping you from selling the animals, so they should stop
Okay,
you from
okay.
selling the
So
urine,
you're
right?
we're on board. So
I'm not.
does a fence stop hair from blowing through a netting fence? Do you think a fence stops hair from blowing through a fence?
Probably no more than a face mask stops the spread of viruses.
When my deer go poop and pee in a mud puddle in the winter and then it thaws in the spring and the water runs all over the place,
Yeah, right,
do
right,
you
right, right,
think
right,
the
right.
the water running in and out of my pens where the wild deer drink, do you think that a fence would stop water from flowing?
Well, you're making their case. Do you see that?
Yeah, I am because I'm rubbing their nose in it. I'm rubbing their nose in it. But now
Yeah,
I'm gonna now that I've made their case, I want to make your case. So let's do this. Let's just be fair. The Constitution talks about equal protection under the law. The U.S. Constitution says we're entitled to equal protection. So what you're saying is, and wink, wink, you're poking fun, being devil's advocate, and I challenge you to be hard on me because you can't win the argument. You can't win it. It's impossible. So what we're saying is avian bird flu, okay? They go in and they find a turkey farmer. He has avian bird flu in his turkeys. And they're going to say, we're foaming the entire building of 50,000 birds. They back a truck up with foam and they suffocate all the turkeys. And they said, well, you got avian bird flu. And that can go
Right.
to a hawk, a goose, a fox. We got to kill it. So they kill all the
Right.
turkeys in the barn. And then they put them down the length of the barn and they cover them with wood chips and straw and they ferment them in the barn. And then they come in and they rotate the pile and they're fermenting them back into nothing. And after the barn's been sterilely cleaned, they get to raise
Mm-hmm.
turkeys again. So what we're saying is all the other turkey barns in Minnesota, I mean, isn't it true that turkey barns are causing avian bird flu? We can tie a connection. The only place we find avian bird flu in big numbers is turkey barns. So let's outlaw all turkey barns in Minnesota. In fact,
Yeah, they would say it's apples and oranges.
let's make it illegal. Let's make it illegal for anybody to sell turkeys in Minnesota. But if they want to
Sure.
keep raising turkeys, they can. They just can't sell their birds. And if they want to raise turkeys, no sales. But if you put up a fence for 200 grand, you can keep raising turkeys. And you're saying,
So,
are you saying that would make sense? No, you're not saying that.
it's apples and oranges a little bit too,
Tell me why.
because, well, because deer, one, there's only 70 deer farms left, so it's a lot less of an ask. Two,
So we're low hanging fruit, is what you're saying. It's easy to go
you are
after
low
us.
hanging fruit.
It's easy to kill us off. We're low
Yep,
hanging fruit.
yep.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
it's a lot more practical.
You know,
Not to say it is practical or even effective, but it is more practical. And the
is it
second thing that makes
practical?
it different is
Is it practical for Stan Tweet to go bankrupt and lose his farm? Is that
no,
practical
I
for
think
him?
I think it's a bad thing, dude. I think it's
Okay.
a bad thing.
So it's not practical for
I'm
Stan.
just well, I just don't know if
Why wouldn't they write
comparisons to
Stan a check?
turkeys or beef are going to get you very far, because like, let's take beef. There is no herds of wild cattle roaming around, so there's no risk if there is a disease on a beef farm. There's
Do you
no
see
risk
how
of it getting into wild cattle, right? So
do you see how far
it is different.
hold on, hold on,
It is different. I just
hold,
want you
no,
to,
not at all, not at all. You're so far indoctrinated. Listen,
I'm just
TB,
looking at it.
no. Listen, tuberculosis. You're not informed. Tuberculosis in Skyme, Minnesota. They brought a cow up from Mexico. It had TB. The cow herd was quarantined, and then it went into the deer. Minnesota's a TB-free state, and they import it in a cow. It's in the wild herd. They have helicopters going around shooting all the deer because of a TB outbreak in Skyme, Minnesota. Now you're telling me, well, this is deer and it goes to deer, so it's apples and oranges. It's not the same. We're talking about standard disease control. And so what did we do when TB outbroke from a cow herd that went into the deer? They killed off all the deer in that area. I'm not saying that was wrong. I'm saying it was a targeted
Okay.
response to
Yep.
eradicating TB off the property. But they never said, let's go kill off all the cattle farms in Minnesota. So
Sure.
so my USDA protocols for 34 years mean nothing to the far left that I don't have CWD. It means nothing. And it's practical to get rid of me. There's only 70. It's practical. It's the risk outweighs the reward. Let's just get rid of these deer farms. I'm clean and healthy. I don't have a disease.
Hmm.
But you're
Hmm.
saying, well, let's just get rid of these last 70. What I'm asking you is, that's what you're hinting. I'm saying Stan Tweet is a God-fearing American citizen who happened to farm in Minnesota, and they couldn't say to him, hey, we know you're in a USDA program. You know, politically, we hate deer farms. We're Democrats in Minnesota. We're going to steal your farm. Why didn't they go to Stan and say, if you had CWD, Stan, if you would have had it, we would have killed all your animals under a USDA protocols and we would have gave you $3,200 a deer. But under the Democrats in Minnesota, you don't have it. So we're going to make you kill them, and you're not going to get indemnification money. We're just going to steal your farm. And that's okay. This is corrupt BS. It's total BS. That's what they're doing. They're stealing farms in the name of disease control when the farms don't have disease. And somehow this is okay, but it's apples to oranges if we say cattle spread TB to deer, turkey barns spread avian bird flu to wild geese, and it comes from wild geese and it goes to fox. Fox are being found dead with avian bird flu. That's a fact.
Well, I didn't know that cattle or bovine TB could transfer to deer. So thank you for educating me on that. I didn't know that. Um, and I'm glad you also shared about your beliefs on disease control, when it's appropriate, right?
Yes.
So you're not saying that you're against the spread of deadly diseases. Would you say that CWD is not the threat that TB is?
What's your question? Is
So
CWD worse or better or different than TB?
is CWD not the threat that TB is? Like,
Well,
is it not as serious as TB?
I don't know. What I can tell you is this. When they do a targeted response to eradicate TB right around a cattle farm in Skyme, and it showed up in the deer, it did get the TB off the landscape. It was demonstrated. We have a targeted approach. We're going to eradicate and kill all the animals, and we're going to get rid of the disease. And it worked. Today we're a TB-free state. We got rid of TB. And what I'm telling
Yeah.
you is for CWD, I can tell you, has any state ever got rid of CWD by killing all their animals? And the answer is no. They can't do it. They've never, ever. In fact, in southeastern Minnesota, where you're talking about, where they've been doing all the massive culling, they
Yep.
kill and kill and kill and kill, and the prevalence rate has gone up. They've found more cases. So all the killing, all the dollars, all the hunter dissatisfaction, guess what? CWD in those states is on the rise. You talked about CWD, it's coming from deer farms. How do you explain states that don't have deer farms popping up with CWD? And I can
Sure.
get you the names. How do these
Sure.
states that don't have any deer farms all of a sudden have CWD? Well, they tested some deer and they just found it. So it's new to the state. Really? Is it new to the state or is the testing new to the state? You got dollars to go test for it. Earlier, you and I talked and we said, hey, um, has CWD, can we get it off the landscape? And your answer was no, I don't think we can. So it has to be brought in. I'm telling you, I think CWD's been here forever. It's been here forever. And if it's been here forever and we can't get it off the landscape, it's going to be here forever. What's the answer? Genetic resistance breeding, like Oklahoma's doing. Greg Fleece Farm in Wisconsin has a preserve in one of the I think he's in the epidemic core of Wisconsin, Dane, Richland, Iowa, Sauk counties. 50% prevalence rate. It shows up on his farm. How did it get there? Well, deer farms are bad. It's been in Wisconsin for forever. It's all over the place. So he tests his deer with a Dr. Seabury from Texas A&M and finds out that GG markers are highly susceptible. He switches over to SS markers through his artificial breeding program. The state said, you can keep raising deer. We're not going to make you kill them all. Let's do some research and find out what's going on. Just don't sell live animals off your farm. So he has animals that are hunted, slaughtered, butchered, test their brainstem. In the beginning with GG markers, he had 50+% positive coming out of his off his farm.
Wow.
50% positive. He switched over his markers to SS markers. In the last 3 and 4 years, guess how many deer have been positive with SS markers? 0. So wait a minute, 0? He went from 50% to 0 by switching his markers. Minnesota doesn't want to look at the science. Oklahoma does. Oklahoma gets to turn deer loose with an SS marker. In Minnesota, under Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, the far left, they want me to kill my SS markered deer. From a herd that's certified not to have CWD, you got to leave and go bankrupt. This is absurd.
Um, be more specific too, if you will, about when you say they're stealing my farm. That brings to mind the idea that they're going to come in with guns and they're going to say this is our farm now, like a communist national, like we're going to nationalize your farm. It's ours now. Thank you very much. But then, of course, that's not what's happening. So, what exactly are they making you do?
They're not. That's not what's happening.
Well, you tell me what's happening. Like, what
Can you
again? Be more
can
specific
you
about the rules.
okay? Can you Google and pull statutes up while we talk?
I'd rather not. That's
Okay.
a
Minnesota
pause. Just tell
Minnesota
me.
Minnesota statute 35.155 subdivision 4. 35.155 subdivision 4. The Democrats passed all these laws against us, and they
Mhm.
said if you lose your license because you have notice of violations, we get to come kill your deer. It says the DNR commissioner can come onto your property and kill all of your animals. Under no other livestock have they ever said, we get to come kill all of your clean, healthy animals against your will if you lose your license to farm. Remember, the Minnesota Constitution, Section 13, Article 7 says a person may peddle the products that they raise on the ground that they occupy, no license required. But the DNR lobby in 35.155 sub 4 to say if you lose your license, we get to come kill all of your animals. They said, well, they're not going to lose their license very fast. How do we get to fulfill a forced killing of all their animals? You're saying, Steve, you're making that up. They're not going to do that like Nazi Germany, come in and kill everything. That's what you just told me. So they said in their pre-planning weaponizing legislation, they said they won't lose their license quick enough. So let's take a livestock industry away from the Board of Animal Health and turn it over to game wardens to go on their property and do inspections. And we can rule them with an iron fist. They're still not going to lose their license. We're still not going to be able to kill them because they'll get to keep their license even though they don't need it under the Constitution. So what can we do next? Let's increase their expenses and take away their ability to earn an income. So what did they do? They said, you can keep farming if you put up a $200,000 fence. Well, why would I put up a $200,000 fence when I can't sell my breed animals in Minnesota? So then they come to an inspection and they said, did you put up an extra $200,000 fence? No, I can't afford it. I went to my bank. My bank said, we're not giving you a loan for $200,000 when your industries went from 700 farms to 70 or 600 to 70. We're not giving you a loan. You can't even sell your breed stock in Minnesota. So we're not giving you a loan to put up an extra fence. So then the game wardens come out. You don't have your extra fence put up to control disease. I don't have disease. Yeah, but we got to put up that fence. So they write me a notice of violation. I end up in court in October. Listen to this. Keith Ellison's attorney's office prosecutes us on a 3-day trial. 3-day trial in the heart of the Twin Cities because I didn't put up a $200,000 fence that I can't afford. Awesome. Keith Ellison doesn't have an attorney available to prosecute Somali fraud, but he has attorneys available to prosecute farmers. I got it. Okay. So now we're waiting for the judge to give us a ruling. It's a pretty simple case. There's pictures, and I testified, Steve, did you put up a $200,000 fence? No, I did not. I can't afford it. In fact, here's a letter of a loan rejection from my bank. They won't give me a loan. Okay, so now once the judge is going to rule, she's taking her time. It's been since October. So once the judge, pretty simple decision, did you put up a fence? No, Your Honor, I didn't. Do you think I'll be found guilty or not guilty of putting up this extra fence? What do you think? I'll probably be found guilty. But the statute doesn't say extra fence. The statute says fence must be maintained to prevent physical contact. So one farmer put up 6 strands of hot wire, and the DNR said, we're not approving that. But the statute doesn't say 5, 6, or 2 strands of hot wire or 8-foot netting. DNR says 5. One guy puts up 6, the DNR say, yeah, we're not accepting that because it's only a foot away from the fence. We want it 3 feet away. Statute doesn't say it. DNR has their interpretation. Okay, great. So once I don't put the fence up, what's going to happen? And the judge rules, I'm going to lose my license. Once I lose my license, Minnesota statute 35.155 sub 4 says, once the license is gone, the DNR commissioner gets to come in and kill all the animals. So you said that that's not happening. They're not going to come kill all your animals. What say you now?
I think you think they will.
You don't think they will?
I don't know what they'll do.
Well, what does the statute say? You don't think they'll follow the law?
If it gives them the ability to, doesn't mean they do it.
Okay. So you have examples of the DNR giving people warnings and going soft and not following the letter of the law?
Cops do it all the time.
Are cops and game wardens the same?
Mm, game wardens do it too.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't you
I
don't you
don't
don't
know.
think the statute means anything, huh?
That's not what I said.
What do you
I know
say?
it gives them the. I believe you that it gives them the latitude to do that, but um, I
You don't think they'll exercise the latitude with it? I think you're maybe
I
right.
don't know.
I think they got a problem. They got a
Who
problem on their
knows,
hands because the Minnesota Constitution says I don't need a license.
right?
So will they revisit it this legislative session? They said
But the
once I lose
federal
my license on statute, they can come in and kill all my animals. But the Minnesota Constitution says I don't need a license. So then what?
the thing that I don't know, it troubled me, but it got my attention was that it wasn't just the state that was ruling against you and deer farmers. It was also a federal judge that did as well. A
Yep.
federal judge said that you guys appealed to, I think. The
Yep.
federal judge said, no, Minnesota can do this. It can make deer farming illegal.
Yep.
And so, and then you appealed to the Supreme Court, and then they didn't take the case.
Correct.
So this is going to happen. I find it drastic. I find it troubling that it kills this
This
industry
this
personally.
this is going to happen or
So,
isn't going to
but
happen.
why did the federal judge agree with the state if the state's so out of line?
Well, there were all the Republicans. There was many Republicans that signed a letter that said this is unconstitutional. I can show you the letter, and they wrote
Hmm.
it saying that it's unconstitutional to outlaw farming. But you are correct. You're 100% correct. The federal judge ruled, and they used rational basis review as the interpretation. And so, if we go under strict scrutiny interpretation, two legal terms, but the federal court said, and you're right, and we should be happy with this. I'm saying this tongue in cheek. There is no fundamental right to farm. So, for all you people
Yeah.
listening, the judge and the court ruled there's no fundamental right to farm in Minnesota or America. The Constitution doesn't say it. You, Tim Walz can stop you from growing a garden. And as I have the audio, they can ban the beef industry to protect Minnesota from global warming. That's the federal court ruling. And so they used the burden of proof in looking at it, rational basis review. It is rational to say we want to protect. But if they would have
Hmm.
applied strict scrutiny in their ruling, which says, does the Constitution give us a right to grow our own food? Under strict scrutiny, the verdict would have been, yes, we have a constitutional right to farm. But as of right now, future cases going forward, it's a huge win for Tim Walz and Keith Ellison. Farming is not protected. And when
Well,
Tim
it is a
Walz,
move in that direction. It is a
huh?
move in that direction that
What do you
I
mean?
said it is a, well, Minnesota has been like a lot of states in the country, they're drifting one way or another. Some states are kind of, I suppose, just sort of hanging out in the middle, maybe like in Ohio or Pennsylvania. But you've got some states that are drifting further to the left, right? The Californias, the Oregons,
Minnesota.
and the Minnesotas, and then you've got some that are going further to the right, like the Floridas and so forth. Um, and Idaho maybe, but So I don't like to see. Um, well, it's sort of like with the wolf issue. Well, I one wants to um, have their leadership be able to be reasonable, weigh both sides, and then come up with a compromise, something that's going to address the issue, but not, um, harm one side or the other, you know, um, exclusively. And when it comes to things like COVID, wolves, um, yeah, there are others. Minnesota's been taking the okay, we can go left or right. Now, I wish we would just kind of stay even keel, but when it comes to it, Minnesota has chosen often to go left. And when it comes to this farm issue, it sounds like it's being informed by bigger government, sort of like we were an outlier in terms of how we addressed COVID. Like, yes, the state did have the right, according to the government and the law enforcement, to shut down all the businesses during COVID. And if you try to open your restaurant, we're going to fine you. All right. Um,
Do you, do you, do
and
you,
yes,
do you think that was right to fine restaurants for not being open, for opening?
I don't. No, I don't think that was right.
Do you think the state should be liable for any financial damage that was caused?
um, yes, I do actually. I think that would be the proper amend, given that it was given that in hindsight we can see that it was unnecessary and overbearing. Um, yeah. Now, in your case with the deer farms, uh, I don't know a made up example or a made up comparison comes to mind. Like, what if someone was had a lion farm and then lions were getting out and there were like six lion farms around the state and lions kept getting out and like killing all these people and all this and that. They would shut down the lion farms, right? And the lion farmers might say, hey, now I've got a right to farm and da da da. So I'm bringing up a crazy silly example because that I think is how they judge deer farms. I think they see deer
Do,
farms that
do you,
way,
do
like,
you,
hey,
let me ask you a question. Do you have Bob Meyer or another DNR op person or far left person in your ear right now as we're doing an interview? Who's in your ear?
do you think
Answer
where do
the
you think I
question.
stand?
No, I want you to answer the question. Who's in your ear right now? Who's in your
Do you
ear?
really think they'd come up with that crazy example? Do you think that's how
No.
they
Just
think?
answer the question. I want to know who's in your ear right now as we're doing this podcast.
I'm going to have the same conversation with or without these. So you're not really going to,
I'm
I'm not
just
going to be able to
asking
hear
you.
you because I don't have my
It was just a simple
earphones on.
question. Answer who's in your ear as we're doing the podcast. It's just simple.
Do you really think someone is in my ear?
Why won't you answer the question?
Dude, no one is in my ear.
Okay, thank you. Let me answer your crazy question. If lions were raised in Minnesota and they got out and they killed a bunch of kids on their way to school, should we just get rid of the lion farms because they have a right to farm? Is that your question?
Well, look, I know it's a
I
silly
don't, but
comparison.
let me answer it real quick, okay?
Go ahead.
If the lion farmer 34 years ago had an agreement with the state of Minnesota, and the state of Minnesota said, you can raise lions, and these are the rules, and they meet all the rules, and then the lions get out and eat everybody. It's a ridiculous scenario. But don't you think the state of Minnesota should come alongside of its partner that had an agreement, like Stan and Fran Tweet, and say, we're
Hmm.
not going to make you go bankrupt? This is something we've
Hmm.
had a change of heart. We don't want lion farms in Minnesota. So, Stan and
Hmm.
Fran, what can we do to make you whole? What can
I
we
agree.
do? We're going to change the legislation. But what they've done is they changed the legislation. Philip Pulitzer, a Ellison attorney and Tim Walz attorney, agreed to federal Judge John Tunheim, yes, we're using legislation to get rid of these guys. And that is theft.
Hmm.
It's theft.
You think there's malicious or vindictiveness here?
Well, I don't think I'm listening to what they say and what they've said on the transcript, and I can let you read the transcript. They admitted that they're using
Hmm.
legislation, they passed legislation to get rid of us. Well, phased out sounds kind of clean, doesn't it? We just phased them
Right.
out. But there's
Right.
people caught in this who are going to end
Hmm.
up going bankrupt, selling their house, and not being able to pay their bills. We had an agreement with the state of Minnesota, run a business. It'll be great. And then they changed the rules. Well, meanwhile, I'm caught up in this. And I just don't understand why they can't be decent to God fearing Minnesota people and say, you know what? We had all sorts of billions of dollars to waste, and we can't give a dairy farmer
Yeah.
and a truck driver who got into alternative livestock. He's had two knees replaced and a shoulder. He's stressed through the roof. He's killing fawns and throwing them in a pit, and we're just going to call it phasing out. And you can go bankrupt. And when you don't have any money and your whole entire retirement stand tweet is wrapped up in this farm, you just go bankrupt. That's fine. What is wrong with these people? Okay, so if they had a change of heart, to your question, make it right. That's pretty simple. We vote and live and pay taxes in this state.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. I do too. I think that is, and along the same vein as I'd say making amends with those restaurants that they cracked down on.
They should make amends with them
Um,
too. I mean, why
yeah.
I had
But see, that's the kind of like impartial kind of leadership that would do that. But I think I think the leadership maybe across the country, but here, um, they're very prideful, and so like to admit they made mistakes and then to like try to amend those mistakes, I don't think they even want to go there. One, they don't want to admit fault. Two, it probably also opens up a can of worms as far as others who would then say, well, what about me? I had to close down my gym and I couldn't be open for this and that much time and da da da. Da. But anyway, that's a whole
I think
other.
it's ridiculous what they've done to us. I didn't create the
Hmm.
statute that said my deer are livestock. The
Hmm.
legislators created 17.452 that says my deer are livestock. I didn't create a pathway for me to raise deer. The state of Minnesota created a pathway for me to raise deer. I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll invest my blood, sweat, and tears in soil and land and start a thriving business. I did that. And then they decide to talk to the experts that side with their side of the argument. They don't want to look at epidemiology reports and find out where the disease is coming. Bob Meyer has all the epidemiology reports. I could call every farm, the farmer has them, and I could get you copies of the epidemiology reports that show where it came from. And it's not being spread from deer farm to deer farm. In fact, the number one vector for spreading CWD, should I tell you what it is? It's carcasses being moved in from Wisconsin and out west and brought home processed, bones being thrown on the landscape. That's being done. And um, hey, so you can go out to Dane, Richland, Iowa, Sauk counties. They have 50% prevalence rate. A deer dies. They shoot deer. They butcher deer. They throw the bones out in a tree row. The, the scavengers drag the bones around the field. They roll up the hay bales and they bale them up, put them on semis, and ship them around the country. And when the cattle farmer rolls out his bale of hay and it's got a little rib bone in there, the deer will eat calcium. They're seeking it. They'll chew on those bones. I've seen it myself. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen deer in the wild do it, chewing on antlers. Lactating does need calcium. They chew on bones, and when they need it for their fawns. So CWD is being spread all over the country. I think it's been here forever. I think it's always going to be here. And an example of what I told your followers to look up is Wind Cave National Park. They had CWD in 2001. It's growing. The elk are out of control. They overpopulate the park. They're not dying. You said at some point, you said, I've seen pictures of emaciated deer dying. It's bad from CWD. And I just challenge you on that to open your eyes and look and say, well, I see a deer that's thin, but I don't have a lab report that says that deer has CWD. It could have had pneumonia. It could have had a twisted gut. It could have had all sorts of things. It could have got shot or killed or hit by a car and got damaged some point earlier in its life. But go to Wind Cave National Park and show me piles of elk dying since 2001. Show me the people walking around in the park with all the dead elk. You can't see it. So as they're overpopulating the park, they hire shooters to go out there and shoot it. So how bad is the disease? I don't know. Let's get pictures of actual elk dead in that park, dying, walking in circles. I don't know. I mean, how can you have a park where people are tourists and animals are tipping over dead left and right? Wouldn't they get rid of the whole herd if that was the case?
So is your prediction that because as of now, deer farms are dead men walking, so to speak, right? Like
Correct. Yep.
you can have your farm, but you can't. I think I read that you can't pass it, or you can pass it to your son, but you can only pass it one generation. So they're basically dead.
Do you, and
Uh,
yeah, we're dying here. I'm still in business. I'm still going to sell thousands of bottles of doe urine from my herd all over the U.S. this fall. Thousands of bottles of doe urines will
yeah.
go out the door from my clean USDA herd that has never had CWD, but I'm being fined for not putting up an extra fence. And
Um,
once I don't have that fence up, I'm going to be found guilty in civil court in the Twin Cities, 3-day trial. Once I'm found guilty, the statute authorizes the DNR to take my license and then come kill my animals. 35155 sub 4, the tail end, they get to come kill my deer. That's what it says.
so that decision is still pending.
Still pending. I think the judge is maybe waiting, dragging her feet. It's been since October. I was in law enforcement for 30 days. I spent a lot of 30 years. I spent a lot of time on the witness stand, and I've been involved in a lot of cases, and I've never seen a case, a civil case, go from October till we don't know when, today and beyond, to get a ruling of
Mm.
whether a person put up exclusionary fence that, or not exclusionary, that prevents physical contact. So I think the judge is maybe waiting to see if something changes this legislative session. If it was after an election year, I don't think anything would happen legislatively. But since it's before an election, I think something could happen legislatively to change the laws as they're written.
So do you still have hope that deer farms can survive in Minnesota?
The damage has been so thorough. So, as you know, in 1997, I started traveling with live whitetail bucks around the country. Tame bucks in a big trailer that were bottle fed, and I worked with them and I tamed them. It's a very rare exhibit. I traveled all over the upper Midwest, Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin. I mean, I went all over to major sports shows to teach people about whitetail deer at major sports shows. Plus, I went to 100 schools to teach kids about deer, to encourage kids to get outside, hunt, fish, enjoy the outdoors. Our philosophy was simple. Kids that are busy in the outdoors aren't breaking into a pop machine at 3 in the morning. So we had a lot of good support and we traveled, and the DNR decided we wanted to end that business. So they attacked me really hard. They created a CWD popped up somewhere in the state on a farm, and they shut down all movement for they did 3 movement bans. Well, I'm in a USDA herd. I have a closed herd. I don't buy and sell animals in and out of I don't buy animals into my farm, and I'm USDA certified. The DNR said we're going to do an emergency ban to ban movement in the state. Steve, you got to forfeit all your income for shows. And I said, well, I'm not going to forfeit my income. You've lied, Bob Meyer. You've lied about the statute. And you created an emergency expedited rule that says you have the authority to stop the movement of livestock across the state, that the DNR has that authority. And the statute you quoted was, Bob, that the Commissioner of Natural Resources may control domestic animals that might be spreading disease. You took that little statute and you stuck it into an emergency order and banned the movement, make me forfeit my income. But you lied, Bob. What does the statute actually say? You only quoted half of it. The statute reads, the DNR commissioner may control domestic animals that could be spreading disease that have been turned loose, set free, or running at large. So the legislators gave the DNR control of animals that are escaped and running around the landscape. Bob Meyer took that statute, forgot the last half, the prerequisite that they have to be turned loose, setting free, and said, Steve, you can't go to your sports shows anymore. At one point, they did a 6-month ban on movement. So I had to forfeit 6 months of income of going to sports
Sure.
shows. And
That's
so
a
I,
whole other
yeah, but
that's a
just real
whole other
quick.
restriction placed on you. Yeah.
Yep. So I challenged him and I said, I'm going to the show and I'll take your ticket. I'm going to get a $200 fine and subpoena power. I get to go to court and subpoena you, Bob, and put you on the witness stand. This is going to be a hoot. You're going to answer questions from me finally. So I went to the sports show and I did get a ticket for um, violating their movement ban, which was built on fraud. They left out the part of the statute that says the animals need to be turned loose, set free, or running at large. I get the ticket, and what happens in court? I win. They didn't have the authority. I win. So now what? The damage was done. All the sports show vendors that I did business with that I had to forfeit contracts, they would put up print 30, 40,000 brochures, TV, radio ads, all spent money in advance that I would be there in other states. And then all of a sudden I say, I can't come to your state event because Bob shut me down. And they said, well, we can't hire you anymore because we can't spend that much money on advertising and then have you not show up because of another state DNR ban. I did win the ticket in St. Paul, and I dared defy them going to St. Paul, and I won that case, but I didn't dare cross a state line because that could have been a federal charge. And even though their statute was bogus and I won in state court, there was no way I was going to challenge and possibly end up in federal court. So they destroyed my entertainment business that I've been
Hmm.
showing live whitetail bucks since 1997. And again, you're saying, well, they're just trying to control disease. And we've had fun bantering back and forth. And I challenged you. I said, go ahead and play devil's advocate and you'll lose because I know the facts. The facts are on our side. Never, when the TB outbreak took place in Skyme, did they shut down all cattle sales across the entire state.
Right.
You know what I mean? That is not the response to disease control.
Mm.
Targeted disease control like they did in Skyme was perfect. They went in. I think it was perfect. People could argue and say, no, it wasn't quite perfect. But from my point of view, the TB that was in the wild deer that came from the cattle, it was eradicated. And there's no example of CWD being contained through massive killing. There's not a state that can demonstrate that massive killing of wild deer to control CWD has contained the disease and even made it better. Hasn't made it better.
So as of today, though, your farm will end, as will the other 69, 70 farms, deer farms in the state. Yes? Like
Well,
that's where we're at right now with that federal judge ruling?
well, the federal judge ruling was that there is no fundamental right to farm in America. Tim Walz has the right to ban farming as he sees fit. I discussed to you, I said the burden of proof for an attorney and a judge to use, they used rational basis review. Had they have
Right.
used the standard of strict scrutiny, the Constitution would have supported us, okay? Now, will that end my farm? Earlier we talked and said, will something change this legislative session? Could it happen? It could. I'm still in business. I still have hunts. I still sell doe urine. I still butcher deer and feed my family nutritious, healthy, clean venison. And my friends get some venison and we're still in business. But the damage, the hemorrhaging that's been done is so thorough and so complete. You said, well, you could give your farm to your one son, one generation, then your farm must die. You're correct. But which one of my four boys would want to take my farm knowing that it's scheduled for extinction through weaponized legislation. Which one of my boys would want to do that? None of my boys would do that. So now here I am. I'm getting up in years. I work hour after hour, 7 days a week, and I'm doing it all alone. The plan was is to have one of my boys working my farm beside me, developing a great farm, and I could back off a little bit. My kids have said, "No, Dad, we can't invest in the farm. We're going to go get other jobs." So I don't have the boy help. They're killing off our industry, and the damage is thorough. Meanwhile, I'm stuck with well over 100 animals on my farm. I have a hub. I could get the actual number, and I'm still in business, But where do we go? The stress is through the roof. But there's been talk at the Capitol. I'm in touch with about, I don't know, many state senators. I even had a Democrat call me, and he said, "Steve, as you know, I'm not in favor of these laws that passed." And I said, "Well, it was 100% Democrats that passed these laws against us." And he
Hmm.
said, "Well, I never was for them. How can I help?" I said, "Well, you can call Sarah Stroman and tell her to back off on the assault. Just back off. And let's revisit this through legislation this year and try to get it so you don't kill us off." He said he would do that.
Okay.
And all the Republicans are against what happened. So if it's such a vicious disease, why is it party line vote?
Right.
Why was it 100% Democrats voting to destroy our farms and Republicans voting to save it?
It's another parallel to COVID. Um, what are other states doing?
Oh,
Like Wisconsin, Dakotas, Iowa.
what
Are
are other?
they
I
are they
don't
sh-
know all
are
the
they
other states.
well, the surrounding states, are they shutting down their deer and cervidae farms?
Well, I told you earlier, Greg Fleece in Wisconsin, they have CWD all over Wisconsin. Dane, Richland, Iowa, Sauk counties are full of CWD. Greg Fleece has a farm. It's in the landscape all around his farm. He finally tested positive. Greg,
Hmm.
the state of Wisconsin said you can run a positive farm. Keep on farming
Hmm.
in Wisconsin. Let's come up with a
Hmm.
cure. And what did Greg Fleece do? He worked with Dr. Seabury. They decided that GG markers at the 96 codon were highly susceptible to CWD. They switched him over to a rare SS marker, which is, I think it's the cure for CWD. Greg went from a 50% prevalence rate in Wisconsin on his preserve to zero. He has $0 coming out of his preserve
Yeah.
when they have an SS marker, $0 positive. He went from 50% to zero. So CWD, chronic wasting disease, every headline always says, always fatal, bad, chronic, bad. It is, they created a new name that's scary. It is the same as scrapie in sheep. It's a misfolded prion. What did we do with scrapie in sheep? They did genetic resistance breeding, and they've
Hmm.
controlled scrapie in the sheep market through genetic resistance breeding. What have we done in the deer industry? We're controlling and working towards the genetic solution through genetic breeding, and that is happening at the Greg Fleece farm. He is breeding for SS marker deer. It's easy to do. I have mostly SS marker deer. I send in DNA tests. And you asked what are other states doing? Oklahoma is turning deer farm deer loose onto the
Hmm.
landscape into the wild if they have an SS marker. In Minnesota, I am being forced out of business and they want to kill all of my SS marker deer that hold the answer and the cure for CWD.
I'm looking down because I'm looking at my phone. Um, because I did ask people if they had any questions for you. I'm seeing if I'm seeing if there are any good questions. Like there's a lot of comments, there's people who well, one guy was asking if you sell your deer Because again, people are curious about deer farming in general. Like they'd never heard of it. And even in Minnesota, where there's a bunch
Hmm.
of deer and a bunch of deer hunting, they deer are a big part of our state, and yet this is a new idea to them. So this guy asks, well, how does deer farming work? Um, do you sell to local grocers um, instead of people hunting for deer in the wild? Do you sell your deer to local grocers and then they sell the venison?
No, I do have venison for me, my family, my friends. We do slaughter more excess stock after the laws were passed against us too, um, that we couldn't sell our breed does. So a breed doe was then, maybe worth $5,000 with the right SS markers, but now that doe's worth literally nothing under the new law. So there is no uh, slaughter facility available in Minnesota where I can bring a trailer load of does in to be slaughtered and they can make them into pepper sticks. You couldn't
Oh,
sell
okay.
you couldn't sell your deer into a livestock place because they're not set up with the infrastructure to handle marketing and processing deer like they would cattle.
When you turn the deer into venison sticks, do those get sold wholesale to retailers?
I don't sell deer to be turned into venison sticks.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, this one guy says because of a lack of regulation, deer farmers were the direct cause of CWD spread in Beltrami County. This is what one guy wrote. Uh, Respond to that, would you?
Right. And so the Beltrami County case, I understand that he was accused of dumping a deer onto county land. Um, I know the guy. I believe full well that he's a paranoid schizophrenic, and he shouldn't have did what he did. So, but after working law enforcement for 30 years, we have laws in place that we go after people who are law breakers. So
Hmm.
if I had somebody driving drunk at 100 miles an hour down the highway, we would arrest somebody for driving drunk in excess of speed. But never did we say we're going to shut down the highway. The highway's got to
Hmm.
stop. We would go after people who were violent offenders. But in that Beltrami case, if I got it correct in my mind, they went out there and they used a test called the RT Quick test. RT Quick to test the soil for prions. And that test is not a valid test. In fact, the USDA will not recognize that test. So the Minnesota goes out there with a test that is not certified and they say we found prions on the landscape. Let's go fence in this area. But that test is not certified. It wasn't certified. It's not a credible test. In fact, I think the USDA came down on the state of Minnesota and said if you're going to use this test, you're going to lose your credibility as a state board of animal health, your certification and
Hmm.
recognition as
Hmm.
being credible.
Okay. So in the Beltrami County case, they should have done better job, or in response to what he did, recognize that as a bad actor, not as a bad industry.
Right. So when we talk about bad actors, if he's a bad actor, then we deal with him. But can I say that
Yeah.
because we had a Republican senator who was soliciting sex from a minor, that all senators are bad? No. What if we had another senator who committed a burglary and
Yeah.
on the Democrat side of her mother's house
Hmm.
or mother-in-law?
Hmm.
Should we say we got to get rid of all senators now? We
I
had two
understand.
we
I
had two
understand.
bad actors and they should be dealt with accordingly.
Actually, one comment here echoes what you said about Oklahoma. He says Oklahoma takes a different approach, I believe, as they see CWD resistant deer as the cure for this. Being they have these deer introduced into the wild to breed it out, I think you should ask the Minnesota DNR why they oppose that. Does
Yes,
the DNR oppose that?
the DNR does oppose genetic breeding. And Michelle Karstensen, it was brought up at a meeting. I don't know what her level of what is it in the DNR. And they said, somebody brought his point up. Minnesota deer farmers with SS markers at codon 96 should in fact be releasing their deer into the wild to build up genetic resistance as the model of scrapie sheep. We can get a hold of it through genetic resistance breeding. And so Michelle Carstensen said, we would turn deer farm deer loose over my dead body. And their argument is,
No.
their
She
argument
said
is,
that?
yeah, over my dead body would we turn them loose? Well, Oklahoma's doing it. And so that's interesting, right? And there's other states that are proposing the
She's a
same.
D, I'm sorry, she's a DNR official?
Yeah, Michelle Carstensen, I believe it is who said it. Yeah. So she said over my dead body. So my point is, what's the DNR's response to
Wow.
genetic breeding? Go back and study Scrapian sheep, and Scrapian sheep was controlled. It's a misfolded prion. I think it's under a microscope, Scrapian sheep and CWD, you can't, nobody can tell the difference. But when you ask for a picture of a prion that's misfolded, nobody can give you that picture. Under all
Yeah.
the microscopes we have, we can't get a picture. We have an artist's rendition, but we can't really see it. Okay, so what the DNR claims in this case is they say, well, your genetic resistance deer are furthering the problem. They're causing it to be a worse deal because they're living longer and they're dying later in life, and they're spreading prions on the landscape for a longer period
Oh,
of
I
time.
see.
Well,
I
well,
see.
here's my point to that. In the
Wow.
wild, most deer die from lead poisoning, a bullet, before they're 3, 4 years old. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a neighbor or a friend that shot a 4-year-old buck. Deer aren't dying from CWD at a year or two old. It takes a while. It's a progressive mental illness, mental thing similar to probably Alzheimer's. So, to say that they're living longer, I think that's ridiculous. They're spreading prions on the landscape. But another thing that spreads prions is what? Wolves. Wolves eat deer that might have CWD, travel 100 miles, go to the bathroom, grass shoots up where they went poop, and prions are in the grass. It gets eaten by a animal, and CWD. This is what I've been told. It can be spread through feces of a carnivore that are traveling all over the upper part of the state. So if we're going to control CWD, we should probably get rid of all the wolves. What do you think of that idea?
Well, there it comes back to the wolf thing again.
Yeah.
I wonder if I don't want to this is conjecture, like I don't know, but I wonder if that DNR official, now it could be out of the goodness of her heart that she doesn't want these deer spreading the prions, like you said. But there also might be, because I've seen this from that ideology, there's a real resistance to a scientific solution. Like they don't like it's ironic because often people will say listen to the science and da 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 da. But in this case, here's the scientific solution, like you're describing down from Oklahoma. Excuse me. And it reminds me of people who, oh, excuse me, who express concern about the climate and environmental, like climate change and the temperature of the earth. And then when people offer a technological solution to it, they don't like that. They don't like technological solutions. Like if you suggest, well, we should do this to try to lower the temperature, or we should look into um, uh, like this kind of energy production that's greener. Sometimes they'll say something back like, well, why don't we just drive less? Why don't we just um, develop less? Why don't we build less? Um, in other words, they don't want a technological answer that allows us to live as we continue to live. What they really want is a way for us to is a way to restrict. Like they like there's something in them that wants to um, enforce a restriction on humanity. And so, no, 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 let's not offer a scientific answer to this CWD problem. let's restrict the rights of deer farmers. Let's come at this through um like uh like we need to pay for our sins, right? It almost gets religious in this sense where they think, no, 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 you can't just buy your way out of, you can't just buy indulgences and, buy your way out of this one. Like you need to do your time. You need to pay for what you did. And I think they see humanity that way. Like, no, 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 no. We're not going to let you get away with this technological answer to destroying the environment. We need to pay we need to revert back to less development, smaller homes, less driving, etc. And in this case, it almost has that same feel. If I'm going to look up her quote because that's a really interesting extreme over my dead body. That's something else if she said that. So I'm going to look that up. But it reminds me of that same
I don't know that
ideology.
I don't know that it's online. It was a meeting, and I have people that were there that heard it come out of her mouth.
Oh,
So
okay,
it's not on YouTube. But let me ask you a question. When you're
okay,
talking about climate and everything else, so
yeah,
so we can have differing views on the climate, and we could talk about that next time for 2 hours. That'd be a fun topic for me and you to have. But I have a question for you. So when the federal judge asked Philip Pulitzer, you're getting rid of deer farms because you want to control a disease that they don't have. That's the undertone of what I'm saying. But the question was then, could you ban the beef industry to
yeah.
protect Minnesota from global warming? Cow farts are bad. Beef are bad for the environment. Would that raise a constitutional crisis? And he said, well, it would raise the issue to the rational basis review. Kind of basically, we'd bring it forward, and this court would have to decide if we could ban the beef industry. So, based on what you're saying about climate, do you think it would benefit our environment if we did cut back on cows in America?
Well, it does tie into this topic then
Okay.
because they would give that argument. In fact, they are giving that argument. Are they not? Is that not a reason why? Like this has been written about a lot,
Right. But
and it's been not just written about; it's been exercised where they're
right.
trying to. And people at the UN, people at um, World Economic Forum, right? They're saying things like, "Well, we need to cut down on meat. We need to get rid of cows." And in England, I think they've tried to, and even have gotten rid of beef farmers
Okay.
in the name of climate.
Okay.
And so I believe that could be attempted in Minnesota. I don't put it past our politicians to do
Oh,
something like that.
oh, amen. I think our politicians, and when you say politicians, I need you to clarify for your audience which politicians would bring that forward.
Oh, the DFL.
Okay. We just got to be clear here. We got to inform people of what's going on. And you're correct. It would be the DFL. So I came on your podcast. You played devil's advocate. You challenged me with a bunch of good questions. We've had fun here. And I came in here with skin in the game live. And I said,
Hmm.
go ahead, be hard on me, play devil's advocate, ask me a bunch of hard questions. And you did that. And I thank you because we need to get the truth out there. But I came in with skin in the game. But I want to know your opinion, not what they say, not what the experts say. I want to know what you say. Are cows bad for the environment? What do you believe? What does Brandon believe about cows being bad for the environment or not bad for the environment? Can you tell me what your thoughts are?
Well, I'm not a researcher in that area, but my belief is that no, they're not.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's ridiculous to say we're going to cut our food source. Remember earlier I told you, I
Yeah,
said, quick Googling, do some Googling. In 1950, we had more
yeah,
cows on in US soil than we do now. In
right.
1950, my quick Googling math showed one cow per four people. And I'm going by memory here. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I think I'm right. It was one cow per four people. Today, it's one
Hmm.
per 10. And the
Hmm.
cattle prices have skyrocketed up so high that people are selling their breed cows to capitalize on this. That means
Yeah.
there will be no
Hmm.
calves in the spring. And when we don't
Hmm.
have calves in the spring, what's going to happen to a price a pound of hamburger in a year or two or three? As
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
attacking agriculture for global initiatives of climate change. And people don't understand where their food comes from. You need to have a cow to have
Yeah.
McDonald's. You need to have a
Right.
cow to have a Texas Roadhouse. You need to have a
Hmm.
cow to make a sloppy hot dish or a sloppy Joe. And turkeys and chickens, avian bird flu, we've killed millions and millions and millions of turkeys and chickens across the
Yeah. It's
US.
amazing.
And so people are like, well,
And
we got to save the environment. Well, let's not,
yeah,
you go 3 weeks without eating and then come back and talk to me.
yeah, yeah. It's a bit detached from the reality of how things work in the real world.
So
And
meanwhile, I'm just sitting up here retired from law enforcement, minding my own 2 cents. I left the fight of law enforcement. I was proud to serve for 30 years, happy to retire. And here I am on my farm, and the DNR says, oh, no, by the way, you've built a farm for 34 years, and we're going to steal it from you. We're taking it away. We're going to legislate you out of existence. We're going to go to the Capitol and lie, spread mistruths. We're going to ignore all the epidemiology reports. We're going to ignore genetic breeding. We're going to ignore your USDA protocols and the hundreds and maybe 1,000 deer heads that you've tested for CWD. We know you don't have CWD, but we still want you to close just in case.
hmm hmm hmm
And
hmm
I'm back in the fight. And the fight's been real.
okay.
It's been exhaustive. It's been stressful. My wife and kids have been in tears. And for these people just to pass these laws and have zero regard for people who are farming on the landscape. And I know you can say, well, people shouldn't be farming wild animals. Minnesota statute says they're not wild, 17.452. They're not wild. I own them. They're livestock. And the state of Minnesota should have never created a pathway for us to be deer farmers, or as you say, lion farmers, whatever you want to say. They shouldn't have created the path. And once they create that path and then they want to destroy us, they should probably create a
Yeah.
restitution for us instead of Stan Tweet, my good friend, may end up selling his house when this is over, as they take away his income. And I see all the fraud that took place. And to me, you guys, it's crazy that we had all the fraud in Minnesota, daycares with no kids. They're licensed. They have a
Yeah.
licensed daycare. I also have a license to raise deer. My license, I have armed officers on my property, video cameras rolling, hyper vigilant, aggressive, in your face. We're here to run you out of business. We're going to do it. And there's no officers available to inspect the license of a daycare leering center. There's no officers. But when the game wardens come to my farm, you didn't put up a $200,000 fence. Here's your notice of violation. Keith
Right.
Ellison now has attorneys available to prosecute us to the fullest extent of the law. We're going to prosecute these farmers because they're not putting up a $200,000 fence. We got attorney generals to prosecute, but there's no prosecutors available to even investigate and go after Somalian frauds. That's your tax dollar. When you write your check for your property tax every year, just smile and say, I'm glad I get to write a check for property tax because it's going to a good place. These Somalis are taking suitcases of cash and shipping it back to their home country. And that's your tax dollar but I'm being prosecuted as a farmer over a disease that I don't have, and there's nothing really that I can see happening on that other end of the spectrum. This is insanity. People, if you want to vote Democrat, just smile. When you write your property tax statement and you pay your income tax, just smile because this is what you're voting for. Belly up to the bar and get a big mouthful of what you voted for. Destruction for rural Minnesota. That should that
Well,
should that should heat up your comment section, right?
yeah, it's I don't know, it's not dark or it's troubling. It's
Yeah,
troubling.
it's real.
It's troubling. And I'm sorry that you're in a troubling situation. Uh, but thanks for sharing it here in great detail and laying out the issue and how it's tangents with The wolf issue, the climate issue, a lot of this stuff is connected. And that's how I tend to look at things in kind of that 10,000 foot writer's perspective, journalist's perspective. So thanks for adding all that context and for sharing your personal experience with this on the front lines of this issue, Steve.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for asking hard questions and trying to challenge me. I think the truth is on my side. And you asked what's going to happen to my farm. New legislation could come forward. If it doesn't, let me be very clear. If new legislation doesn't come forward to straighten this mess out, the judge will probably rule that I don't have fencing up, which I don't, and I admitted to exclusionary fencing. The judge will probably rule in the favor of the DNR. Then the DNR is going to say, well, you need to rectify this. I can't get a loan for 200 grand, not doing it. Okay, we're going to take your license to farm. I think that's reasonable. I think that's what they're going to do. I don't think it's reasonable, but I think they'll do it. Then what happens? They have the authority to come kill my animals as per statute. You said, I don't think they'll do that. Well, they have authority to do it. However, it directly contradicts the Minnesota Constitution that says I have a right to farm and they're my animals. So what's going to happen? This is going to be funny. I'm going to wait for a court order for them to come and kill all my deer. You say it's not going to happen. Good. It won't happen then. So that means that I'm going to raise deer with no license. Once I don't have a license, and I'm waiting for a court order to come kill them. We're at an impasse. And when they come with a court order, then I'm going to let them kill all my deer. But you say that's not going to happen, and you might be right. So if they don't come with a court order, but they take my license, what's going to happen?
Well, it
I'm
might
going
come
to,
to that. I guess you might be right about that. And if it does happen that way, you get that on video, and I'll see you going viral on X again.
but yeah, but here's the last part. If they take my license, that means I farm for the next 20 years with no license. That means I have no game warden on my farm, no inspections. I have no tags in my animals. I have
Right,
no fence inspection.
right,
And I just
right.
continue to raise deer without a license. And the Minnesota
Yeah,
Constitution, Section 13, Article 7, says a person may peddle the products that they grow from the property that they occupy, no license required. So go ahead, get a court order to come kill my animals when the Minnesota Constitution says I don't need a license. I will continue to farm until I get a court order to come kill my animals. I don't think they'll just show up in tactical gear one day and say, we're here to kill your animals. I think they'll get a court order because I have property rights. So
mhm.
it might be fun farming for 20 years with no license and no harassment. And are the
Well, that's
DNR,
the irony of this. That's the irony of this. Now you're outside the system, doing it rogue, and now they have less control than ever and less oversight than ever. So, in
so,
their eyes, it's less safe, it's less
well,
maintained
I think,
or regulated. But that's the irony when you try to take too much control is that you end up losing it.
so I appreciate everything you're saying, but I just got to jack you up when I hear you say a word that's not quite right because I'm a law-abiding citizen, and you said, well, if when you're doing it rogue, I get what you meant, but let's just talk about rogue. I want to follow the laws. I've sent in brainstems
Right.
for 1,000 animals. There's nothing rogue about me, but then they
Sure.
admit to weaponizing legislation. And if you call me exercising my God-given constitutional right to grow my own food rogue, well, then I'm rogue. Is that fair?
It's fair.
Okay.
All right, let's wrap this up. Thanks so much. Thanks
You bet.
again. Enjoy the rest of your day and good luck with the case.
Let's do this again and we'll talk about, we got other topics we can talk about. Okay. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to check in 6 months, a year, and see if any legislation was proposed or even adopted.
Well, I think new legislation, we'd hear about it by it passing what, by May? So
Hmm. Okay. All
meanwhile,
right. Well, have a good spring.
we're still in business. Porterwhitetail.com, Porter whitetail.com. Still in business. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep. Bye.